What did you do? Vera gasped. I've moved us slightly out of phase with normal space, Cordelia explained, concentration evident in her voice. We're partially in the void current now. They can't see us, but I can't maintain this for long. The pursuing vessel slowed, scanning patterns sweeping across the area where the nightshade had been. Minutes passed in tense silence before the black ship changed course, continuing its search elsewhere. Cordelia released her hold on the console, the luminescent patterns retreating back into her skin. The view screen returned to normal, stars blinking into existence as the ship fully re-entered normal space. She swayed, clearly exhausted by the effort. Theo caught her before she could fall. That was incredible. And terrifying, Vera added, though her tone had shifted from suspicion to reluctant awe. Could Nexus operatives do that too, if they had succeeded with their program? Eventually, Cordelia admitted. But there's something they don't understand about the void current. It's not just energy to be harnessed, it's alive in its own way. It chooses its conduits. That's why their previous experiments failed. She leaned against Theo, her body temperature noticeably cooler than human norm. Dr. Merrick won't stop. Not now that he knows I survived. The void current showed me possibilities. Futures where Nexus uses what they learn from me to build weapons beyond imagination. Then we make sure that doesn't happen, Theo stated firmly. Starting with finding someplace safe for you. I know where we can go, Vera said unexpectedly. Both turned to look at her. My sister lives in a research collective on Demeter Prime. They specialize in helping people who've been modified without consent. Corporate experiments, military enhancements gone wrong. They wouldn't turn us in? Theo asked. They hate corporations more than they fear them, Vera replied. And they have resources, medical facilities, security systems, legal protection. Cordelia considered this. How far? 3 days at maximum speed. We'd have to take a circuitous route to avoid Nexus checkpoints. It's worth the risk, Theo decided. Set course. As Vera programmed the navigation coordinates, Theo led Cordelia back to the small cabin they'd converted for her use. The exertion had clearly drained her, the luminescent patterns flowed sluggishly beneath her skin. You should rest, he suggested, helping her to sit on the narrow bunk. Theo, she said softly, catching his hand as he turned to leave. You never asked me why I trust you. He paused. I assumed it was because I got you off that station. No. Her violet eyes held his gaze. When I was in stasis, I wasn't unconscious. My mind wandered the void current, perceiving echoes of what might come. I saw many possible rescuers, opportunists seeking to exploit me, scientists wanting to study me. And me? Theo asked, suddenly uncertain. You were different. The luminescent patterns brightened slightly around her heart. In every timeline where you found me, you never asked what I could do for you. Only how you could help. The implications of her statement hung between them, that she had somehow foreseen him, known him before they met. Get some sleep, he said gently, unnerved yet moved by her revelation. Tomorrow we plan our approach to Demeter Prime. As he left her cabin, the ship's lights flickered momentarily. Vera called from the bridge, voice tight with alarm. Theo. The comms just picked up a general broadcast. Nexus Corporation has issued a system-wide alert for a dangerous escaped bioweapon with our ship's description. They're offering $1 million credit reward. He cursed under his breath. How long until we reach Demeter Prime? Too long, Vera replied grimly. We're going to need a new plan. In her cabin, Cordelia stared at her reflection in the small mirror mounted on the wall. As the ship accelerated toward an uncertain sanctuary, the luminescent patterns beneath her skin formed a brief, unmistakable image, a symbol she had seen repeatedly in her void visions. An ancient sigil that the humans would recognize as a jack-o'-lantern face, an omen of the Halloween reckoning to come. He's waiting for us, she whispered to her reflection. At the threshold between worlds. The nightshade plunged deeper into the darkness of space, carrying its crew toward a confrontation none of them fully understood, a battle that would determine not just Cordelia's fate, but potentially that of humanity itself. Part 3, Reckoning at Midnight. The perpetual twilight of Demeter Prime's largest moon cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. Appropriately named Samhain by its early settlers, the moon housed the research collective in a sprawling complex of domes and underground facilities camouflaged within the cratered landscape. On Earth's ancient calendar, this would be October 31st, Halloween, a fitting date for what Cordelia had begun referring to as their threshold crossing. Theo, Vera, and Cordelia crouched behind a ridge overlooking the collective's main entrance, watching as Nexus security forces established a perimeter around the facility. They had arrived too late. Somehow, Merrick had anticipated their destination. "So much for your sister's sanctuary," Theo muttered to Vera, whose face was tight with worry. "They must have intercepted our encrypted transmission," she replied. "Juliana would never betray us." Cordelia remained silent, her violet eyes fixed on the armed figures below. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed in slow, deliberate rhythms, almost as if communicating with some unseen presence. Over the past 3 days, these patterns had grown more complex, forming intricate mandala-like structures across her pale skin. "There's another way in," she finally said. "The facility extends deeper than they realize. There's an abandoned mining tunnel 2 kilometers east. It will connect with the lower levels." Vera frowned. "How could you possibly know that?" "The void current shows me paths others can't see." Cordelia turned to them, her expression solemn. "But there's something else you need to understand before we proceed. Dr. Merrick isn't just here for me. Tonight, what humans once called Halloween, the barrier between dimensions thins naturally. He's planning to use me as a catalyst for something much worse." Theo's hand instinctively moved to the pulse pistol at his hip. "What exactly?" "A full breach into the void current. He's brought equipment to force me to serve as a permanent gateway." Her voice trembled slightly. "If he succeeds, entities from the void will have direct access to this reality." "Entities?" Vera asked. "You never mentioned entities before." "Because I hope to avoid this confrontation entirely." Cordelia's luminescent patterns darkened to a deep indigo. "The void current isn't empty. It's inhabited by beings that exist beyond our conception of life, ancient, powerful consciousnesses that have been watching humanity for eons." "And they're hostile?" Theo questioned. "Not inherently. But they're curious, and their mere presence can unravel human minds. Think of them as deep-sea creatures suddenly released into a shallow pond. Their natural movements would devastate the environment simply because they don't belong there." The implications settled heavily between them. This was no longer just about Cordelia's freedom, it was potentially about preventing a catastrophic breach between realities. "We need to move," Vera decided, checking her chronometer. "Sunset in 20 minutes. They skirted the security perimeter, using the moon's natural formations as cover. Cordelia led them unerringly to an outcropping of dark rock that concealed a narrow fissure, the entrance to the abandoned mining tunnel. As they squeezed through the opening, their suit lights revealed a passage that plunged steeply downward, ancient support beams creaking ominously above them. "Your sister's collective built on top of these mines?" Theo asked, testing each step before committing his weight. "The mines were the reason the collective chose this location," Vera explained. "The ore extracted here has unusual properties, disrupts scanning technology, shields against certain energy signatures. Perfect for hiding fugitives from corporate justice," Theo noted. "Or for containing a breach between dimensions," Cordelia added quietly. They descended in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. The tunnel eventually opened into a larger chamber filled with abandoned mining equipment. Cordelia moved directly to what appeared to be a solid rock wall and pressed her palm against it. The luminescent patterns flowed from her hand into the stone, revealing circuitry hidden within. "Nexus technology," she explained. They funded the original mining operation decades ago, before abandoning it as unprofitable. The collective repurposed their security systems. The walls slid open, revealing a modern corridor with subdued lighting. Emergency sirens wailed distantly, confirming that the collective was aware of the Nexus incursion above. The main laboratory will be 3 levels down, Cordelia stated with eerie certainty. That's where Merrick will set up his equipment. He needs the collective's particle accelerator to generate enough energy for the breach. They encountered no resistance as they moved through the facility. Everyone had either evacuated or was engaged with the Nexus forces above. When they reached the central laboratory complex, Cordelia suddenly staggered, clutching her head in pain. "He's here," she gasped. "He's already begun the initialization sequence." The laboratory doors stood partially open, harsh blue light spilling through the gap. Theo peered carefully inside, assessing the situation. The vast circular chamber housed impressive scientific equipment surrounding a raised platform. Dr. Merrick, a tall, gaunt man with silver hair, stood at a control console, accompanied by 6 armed guards and several technicians in Nexus uniforms. At the center of the platform was an empty containment unit, clearly intended for Cordelia. "We need a distraction," Theo whispered, withdrawing from the doorway. Vera nodded grimly, removing several small devices from her utility belt. "Sonic disruptors. They'll disorient everyone in the room for about 30 seconds. "Not enough time," Cordelia interrupted, her voice changing subtly, deeper, with an echo that hadn't been there before. "I need to get to the central console. From there, I can reverse the initialization sequence." "And if you can't?" Theo asked. Her violet eyes met his, now swirling with mysterious depths. "Then I use the equipment for my own purpose instead." Before he could question her meaning, Cordelia's body suddenly tensed. The luminescent patterns across her skin flared brilliantly, then vanished completely, leaving her appearing fully human for the first time since he'd found her. "He's activating the dimensional anchor," she explained urgently. "It's pulling at the void current within me. We have to move now." Vera didn't hesitate, triggering the sonic disruptors and hurling them through the doorway. The devices emitted a high-pitched wail that sent the laboratory's occupants clutching at their ears in pain. Theo and Vera rushed in, weapons drawn, while Cordelia moved directly toward the central console with preternatural speed. "Stop her!" Merrick shouted, recovering faster than his guards. "Don't let her reach the equipment." Chaos erupted as Theo and Vera engaged the security forces. Despite being outnumbered, they had the advantage of surprise and position. Theo disabled 2 guards with precise shots from his pulse pistol while Vera engaged in close combat with another, her frontier upbringing evident in her efficient brutality. Cordelia reached the console just as the laboratory's lights began to flicker. The air shimmered strangely, like heat rising from sun-baked metal, and a low humming filled the chamber. On the monitors surrounding the platform, warning messages flashed, dimensional anomaly detected. "You're too late, N7, Dr. Merrick called out, aiming a specialized weapon at her. "The anchor is already active. Your connection to the void current is the final component. Surrender now, and I'll ensure your integration is painless." "My name is Cordelia," she replied calmly, her fingers dancing across the console. "And you never understood what you created." The luminescent patterns suddenly reappeared beneath her skin, more intense than ever, flowing like liquid light through her veins. The laboratory equipment responded to her touch in ways it shouldn't have, displays changing and energy levels fluctuating wildly. Merrick fired his weapon, but the energy bolt dissipated before reaching her, absorbed by the increasingly visible field surrounding Cordelia. The dimensional anomaly warnings increased in urgency as the humming grew louder. "What are you doing?" Merrick demanded, genuine fear breaking through his clinical demeanor. "What I was meant to do," Cordelia answered. "Not open a gateway for you to exploit, but close one that never should have been breached." The air around the platform began to fracture, revealing glimpses of something beyond, a swirling vortex of impossible colors and geometries that hurt the eyes to observe. Shadowy forms moved within it, pressing against the thinning barrier between worlds. Theo fought his way to Cordelia's side, dispatching the last guard blocking his path. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. The void entities have been influencing Merrick for years, she explained, voice eerily calm amid the chaos. Whispering to him through dreams, guiding his research. They want access to our reality, and tonight, Halloween by the old calendar, the natural barrier is at its weakest. She turned to face the growing dimensional tear, raising her hands toward it. The luminescent patterns flowed from her body into the air itself, forming a complex lattice of light that intersected with the breach. I am the bridge, but also the gate, she intoned, her voice overlaid with others, echoes and harmonics that suggested multiple consciousnesses speaking in unison. And the gate decides what passes through. Dr. Merrick screamed in rage, lunging toward her with a secondary weapon. Theo intercepted him, catching the scientist's wrist and twisting until the device clattered to the floor. They struggled briefly before Theo delivered a decisive blow that sent Merrick sprawling unconscious. The dimensional tear had grown to fill nearly half the laboratory, equipment shorting out as reality itself buckled under the strain. Through the breach, massive shadowy forms pressed forward, entities of pure void current energy trying to force their way through. Help me, Cordelia called to Theo, extending her hand. I need an anchor to this world. Without hesitation, he clasped her outstretched fingers. The moment they touched, the luminescent patterns flowed from her skin into his, creating a circuit between them. Pain unlike anything he'd experienced lanced through his body, not physical agony but the overwhelming sensation of his consciousness expanding beyond its natural boundaries. Through their connection, Theo glimpsed what Cordelia experienced constantly, the swirling infinity of the void current, teeming with ancient entities whose very existence defied comprehension. But he also felt Cordelia's presence guiding him, protecting his mind from being overwhelmed. Together, they faced the breach. The luminescent patterns now surrounded them both in a protective cocoon as Cordelia began to speak in a language that sounded like crystalline structures shattering and reforming. The entities beyond the breach responded, their shadowy forms undulating in patterns that somehow conveyed meaning. They're agreeing to withdraw, Cordelia translated for Theo. I've shown them the consequence of forced entry, mutual destruction of both realms. The breach began to contract, the impossible colors fading as reality reasserted itself. The shadowy entities receded, their curiosity temporarily satisfied by this communication. As the tier closed completely, a pulse of energy swept through the laboratory, overloading the remaining equipment and plunging the room into darkness. When emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, Theo found himself still clutching Cordelia's hand. The luminescent patterns had receded from his skin but continued to pulse softly beneath hers, now returning to their normal intensity. It's done, she whispered, exhaustion evident in her voice. The breach is sealed, stronger than before. Vera approached cautiously, keeping her weapon trained on the unconscious forms of Merrick and his team. We need to move before reinforcements arrive. No need, came a new voice from the doorway. A woman who strongly resembled Vera stood there, accompanied by several armed individuals wearing the insignia of the research collective. We've neutralized the Nexus forces topside. You must be the guests my sister mentioned. Juliana surveyed the destruction with a practiced eye. Dimensional physics incident. Something like that, Theo confirmed, still trying to process everything he'd witnessed. Well, you've come to the right place. She gestured toward Cordelia. We specialize in helping people the corporations have tried to weaponize. Though I admit, you're the first dimensional conduit we've encountered. As collective security personnel secured Merrick and his team, Juliana led them to a secure medical facility where Cordelia could rest and recover. The strain of closing the breach had depleted her severely, the luminescent patterns beneath her skin were barely visible now. Will she be all right? Theo asked the collective's physician, unwilling to leave Cordelia's side. Her readings are stabilizing, the doctor replied. Her physiology is unlike anything I've seen, but she appears to be healing herself. Later, As Theo sat beside her bed in the dimly lit recovery room, Cordelia's eyes fluttered open. The violet irises had lost some of their supernatural glow, appearing almost human now. "You stayed," she observed softly. "Of course I stayed." He took her hand gently. "We've come too far together for me to leave now. The entities will try again," she warned. "Not soon, but eventually. The void current always seeks equilibrium between dimensions. And we'll be ready when they do," he assured her. "You're not alone anymore, remember?" A small smile curved her lips as the luminescent patterns briefly brightened beneath her skin, forming the shape of intertwined hands over her heart. Outside the collective's domes, Samhain's perpetual twilight began shifting toward true night. On this Halloween, the veil between worlds had been tested but held firm, thanks to a woman created to breach it who chose instead to become its guardian. As Cordelia drifted back to sleep, her final whispered words hung in the air between them: "Some boundaries are meant to be maintained, not crossed." That's the true lesson of the threshold. Theo watched over her, thinking about thresholds of all kinds, between dimensions, between species, between strangers and something more. They had all been crossed tonight, irrevocably changing everyone involved. Beyond the facility's walls, the stars of Demeter Prime's night sky seemed to pulse in rhythm with the luminescent patterns beneath Cordelia's skin, a cosmic reminder that the universe contained wonders and terrors in equal measure, and sometimes, the difference between them was simply which side of the threshold you stood on.